Welcome back to the Dynasty Heat Seekers. Although I'm handsome, I am not Bryce Handsome. He's off on vacation this week, so hopefully he's enjoying some quality time away and relaxing. But tonight, we're going to have some fun. We are going to talk about undervalued players in honor of the amazing articles that Rick has started posting on RotoHeat.com. We thought, why not take a great idea and expand on it? So we are going to be talking about undervalued wide receivers tonight. We're going to give you probably about 10, maybe even a little more, depending on how quickly we get through it. But we're going to enjoy it. We're going to have some back and forth, and we'll see. Maybe we can disagree a little bit. With that being said, I am RotoHeatBrad as always. Normally you see me on Monday and Thursdays, but I like to make special guest appearances just for the fun of it. Joined by my main man, Anthony Leone. How are you, my friend? How's the world treating you these days?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to see you. Happy to stream with you again. I think you came on a couple weeks ago, but then you were here all last year on the Heat Seeker stream. So it's good to see you back again, and I'm happy to get underway here. This is cool.
Yeah, it'll be a fun topic. I mean, the idea of the undervalued player, especially nowadays, takes on a different, a more important form, because with the depth at wide receiver, if you can find some guys that you can get well below, or if you get them around their ADP and they outproduce it significantly, I mean, you can really put yourself in a championship position. I mean, we saw that with plenty of players over the last few years. I mean, I remember drafting in a startup last year. I did a startup last year and took Cooper Kupp in like round 7 or 8. Guy wound up really carrying my team to victory in most cases, because he just outperformed all wide receivers last year. So if you can get guys at their ADP that are maybe undervalued, that's huge success for you. So with that being said,
it even carries over, if you've already drafted, if you've been in a league, 3, 5, 10 years, just because you're not drafting right now on ADP. I mean, you can still use ADP to kind of gauge where a player is valued at, and you can still really make big improvements to your team really fast. So
absolutely,
this is good.
And I will say that there are plenty of places to get ADP. DLF is one of the big ones. Everyone loves Dynasty League football, and they do a great job. We are using Sleeper's ADP just because I chat with them quite a bit on Twitter, and I'm sending messages back and forth. And I've started integrating Twitter into my leagues, or Sleeper into my leagues more. So we are actually using Sleeper's ADP. And if you're on YouTube right now, you'll see it in the show notes. So if you want to see the ADP that Anthony and I are going to be using, it's there. And if you have questions, feel free to hit Sleeper up on Twitter, because they love to interact with the community, and they do a good job with that. But with that being said, we're going to start with Anthony. Anthony, who is the first guy that you see that's undervalued at the wide receiver position this year?
Yeah, for me, I have to give a shout out here to Jarvis Landry. I was shocked when I saw the ADP wide receiver 72. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. He's obviously a little bit older, 29 years old. He's now with the Saints, new team, new season. I think he's on a 1-year deal, but he's always been a PPR machine. And I really do think his value and production this year could really rival someone like Michael Thomas on that team. But he comes at a huge discount. I think we're going to get into Michael Thomas a little bit later, but even still, like wide receiver 72, I mean, most guys in this area, like, you wouldn't feel comfortable starting on a weekly basis. But with Jarvis Landry, I think he easily would slide in as a wide receiver 3 or a flex play on most teams, contending or not. I just think he's just at an incredible value right now. He's had a lot of buzz already that he's jiving well with Jameis. That's why he wanted to go to New Orleans. He was born in Louisiana. He's personally motivated to do well for that reason alone. And he wanted to go play with Jameis. I think he's going to have a really good season. And yeah, I know he's a little bit older at 29, but at the same time, especially if you're contending, he is the perfect type of player to go get right now. His value has never been lower, and I think he is set up to have a really good season. What do you think, Brad?
So the player himself, I've always been a Landry fan. I think he's a really great piece to move around on the inside of the formation, kind of as a slot guy. He's done outside over the years, but I think nowadays he's really primarily best suited in the slot, where he can kind of work his strong route running ability to get himself open against, the slot corner or the linebacker, whoever's on him. The question I have, and the thing that, obviously we're not getting answered today because it's the offseason still, is what is this offense going to look like? When you look at, and we know that Sean Payton's out, but it's very similar. The staff is basically the same guys that were under him. They just all kind of got elevated. This team was like almost dead last in pass attempts last year. I think they were like third lowest in the league at just over 500 pass attempts as a team. Now, obviously that was with a smorgasbord of borderline NFL players, Trevor Siemian and I can't think of tight end, converted quarterback, converted tight end, gadget player, Taysom Hill. They had a ton of different quarterbacks come through and play. I think with Jameis Winston being the guy there, I think this really elevates them. But what are they going to do? How many pass attempts are we looking at? When you look at the league lead in pass attempts, a team like Tampa Bay, Kansas City, the Chargers, Steelers, 664 pass attempts. I mean, you think with Ben and that and everybody was down on them, they still were, all these teams had so many pass attempts where New Orleans didn't. That's my concern. How many balls will there be to go around? Healthy Michael Thomas, Chris Olave coming in, Alvin Kamara, there's a lot of mouths to feed. So what does that look like? If Jarvis can get, 100 to 110 targets, I think that would be really great, and he would outperform his ADP. I think if he gets something like 50 to 75 targets, I don't know. He probably still can outperform his ADP, but I just don't know. Like, I struggle with that. If he doesn't outperform, or if he doesn't get, more than 75 targets, I just don't know what that looks like for his ADP.
But
right?
Who would he be competing against targets from? I mean, obviously Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, but there's really no one else. I mean, Chris Olave is a rookie. I wouldn't expect him to be.
Well, he'll probably be on the
Jarvis
outside,
Landry.
right? Like, Olave's probably your outside guy, and Landry's probably your slot guy, right?
I mean, I don't know. I could see in two wide receiver sets, Landry and Michael Thomas on the field.
Probably, potentially, yeah.
I mean, I don't see Olave starting ahead of Landry or Michael Thomas. So
no, probably not.
I mean, in most situations, I think he's going to be the second wide receiver option.
That's the one thing I now need to figure out is I need to see how many plays they run out of 3-man sets, because I feel like this.
But even still, it doesn't. I mean, using
that was
last
what I was
year's
thinking
data, like with Michael Thomas didn't play last year.
Mm-hmm.
Landry wasn't there. I mean, who was their number one wide receiver last year?
Was it Marquez Callaway? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about guys that wouldn't start on almost any team anyway. So I mean, we can look at those numbers and stuff. I think that's kind of a fool's errand.
And yeah, so either way, I think I agree with you. I'm just throwing out other pieces of information to try to build this picture of him. So I agree that he should be very much outproducing. And even if you look at Underdog's ADP at wide receiver 60, I would gotta think he outperforms that, right? I gotta think he's still undervalued, no matter whose ADP you're using, because this guy in my mind is a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2, right? So that's probably. If you're in a standard 12-man league, that's, somewhere around wide receiver 28 to, probably somewhere in the 25 to 35 range wide receiver wise. So he should still outperform any of that ADP, right?
Right.
That's where I would agree with you. I'm just putting out more pieces of information and muddying up the conversation a little bit, and not even playing devil's advocate. I'm just agreeing with you, but adding more information in there.
Yeah. And I don't know if Underdog is straight redraft or not. I mean, I think Sleeper might be adding everything all in together.
Yeah, Sleeper's going to be Dynasty, and I don't know that there's really going to be any redraft information into there. I think a lot of what Sleeper stuff right now is going to be his Dynasty. I mean, if there are redraft leagues that drafted, that's probably in.
Yeah, and I would expect for redraft, Landry would be quite a bit higher up. I mean, a lot of people want, people are going to take Olave over Landry in a redraft setting or even a best ball setting. But in a dynasty setting, that's when you would, consider Olave. But just from a straight value for this season, and maybe next year he signs somewhere else. He's only on a 1-year deal. But I just think it's criminal how low his ADP is right now, given that he's still 29. He's still, as a PPR type player, he probably has, 2 to 3 years left of high quality production. And I just think his ADP is criminal. Even at 60, that seems low. But even still, I mean, at 74, what is he at on Sleeper? Like, it's just way too low.
Yeah, 72. Yeah, but yeah, it's still pretty low. All right, so Jarvis Landry would be our undervalued wide receiver number 1. Number 2 is my guy, Alan Lazard from the Green Bay Packers. Alan Lazard from the Green Bay Packers. As a Lions guy, I don't like Packers no matter what, but I'm going to pick him here. And really, kind of honorable mention Amari Rodgers, right? Like Amari Rodgers and Alan Lazard are 2 guys that I think have a chance to outperform. Alan Lazard is who I'm sticking with mostly because we've seen what he can do with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers does have at least some rapport with him. And Alan Lazard's still young enough to not, have the wheels fall off like Randall Cobb or a Sammy Watkins who just cannot stay healthy. I mean, injuries have really ruined his chances. But look at the team. When they got rid of Devonta Adams, that's 169 targets from last year. So even if they spread that out a little bit, even if you're looking at something like, 90 to 115 targets for a guy like Alan Lazard, who right now is slated to be their number 1 receiver. Now, obviously, they've drafted rookies. They spent a high pick on Christian Watson. We know Aaron Rodgers loves to trust rookie receivers. So, a guy like Alan Lazard has every opportunity to well outperform wide receiver 62. Now, the only caveat I throw in there is the name I already said, Amari Rodgers. Amari Rodgers is a guy that could sneak in there too, just because he can be moved all over the field, kind of a gadgety type receiver. So that may sneak into it, but that's 169 targets for a team that chucks the ball a lot. I mean, when you look at last year's numbers overall, they finished kind of in the middle of the league, but they were right around 600 pass attempts. I mean, they finished with 593. That's a lot of pass attempts. And, we know Robert Tonyan at tight end, and then Aaron Jones. I mean, he's going to do some pass attempts to his running back. I mean, you see the picture here, and there's just not a lot to trust. Now, do they go get a Julio Jones or one of these older guys who's sitting on the market who just doesn't want to do OTAs and wants to wait till camp? Maybe. I mean, they could, and that could make this a moot point. But right now, with where the ADP is, with how cheap you can get Lazard, I would buy shares of him very easily just to see what happens. In my mind, it's put a chip on the table and see what happens. What do you think about Alan Lazard?
So this is where I might disagree with you a little bit. And I know he was the thumbnail on our stream here. The issue I have with Lazard is he really going to be fantasy relevant next year or the year after? I doubt it. And you just hinted at he may not even be relevant this year. So why would you draft Alan Lazard when you could draft someone like Landry, who I just mentioned, whose ADP is lower? You know what I mean? Like, why would you take that? Why would you pick him ahead of and I'm not saying you would take him ahead of Landry, but why would you take him at that ADP when he may not even be relevant this year, let alone, and I think you would agree, he's probably not going to be relevant next year. The only reason why he's relevant now is because there's really no one else to throw the ball to. And so my concern is he may not even be relevant this year, and he's probably not going to be relevant next year. And so for me, I'd rather take someone that I think has more longevity in the league over someone who's just kind of in a good spot right now, but especially may not even be in a good spot 3 months from now. So that's my concern. I would not go out of my way to draft Alan Lazard myself. I think right now he's actually a better sell just because, they didn't really draft a high-profile wide receiver in the rookie draft. I think you could probably trade and get maybe a 23-second for him, and I would be all over that. So I don't know if you agree with that evaluation or.
Yeah, a little bit. So I think if somebody offered me a second, I'd probably do it depending on what my roster looks like. In my mind, if he outproduces wide receiver 62 and gets you in the wide receiver, 3 conversation, it's a win for me,
Sure.
And I'm okay with that. He's a guy that's been with the team for now going on 4 years. Now, obviously, nobody's taken over Devonta Adams' spot with Devonta Adams on the field. I get it,
Right.
but he saw consistent action throughout the 4 years he's been there, or at least the last 3 years. I know he's got at least somewhere in the 30s every year when it comes to catches. No, that's not super sexy. I know that's not like getting anybody all hot and bothered. But what that says is that Aaron Rodgers trusts him a little bit and is starting to look his way. Now, the thing that I think gets me most excited about him is probably the touchdown potential. Last year I think he had something like 35 or 36 catches, and 6 of those were touchdowns. So at his height, I think he's 6'5". He gives you that red zone threat. Will he be with the team after this year? Maybe. I mean, he's like we saw there, he's got a second round tender, so it's at least a 1-year deal with potential for more. With the way wide receivers come in the league anymore, it wouldn't surprise me if they replace him. It wouldn't surprise me if he stuck around. It wouldn't surprise me if he was a starter next year. It wouldn't surprise me if he was just continued to be a depth guy. At that position at wide receiver 62, I feel like it's a good get. If you're in a startup draft, get. If you can trade for him for cheap, get. I've tried to trade and send like 3rd-round picks to guys, and nobody's really bought on that. So I think where you're at with the second is probably the sweet spot where people are going to be willing to move them. If you can get a second or anything higher, I would sell. And hopefully you don't feel bad about it. Hopefully he really doesn't pan out. Maybe I'm just crazy. But if you get wide receiver 3-ish or wide receiver 4 numbers out of him, he's definitely a guy that is outperformed the value. Yeah,
no, I get it. When I typically build my teams, I like to look at least a few years out. And so with him, just personally, I don't see him being a factor, next year or the year after. So those are guys I typically shy away from.
Yeah.
But he certainly could he could certainly become a, wide receiver 3 this year and be a big part of a lot of winning teams.
Yeah. When I'm looking at my starting lineup, I try to make it kind of balanced, so if I've got an elite veteran who's, a little bit older, and maybe 25, 26, sure. If I'm building my taxi squad, all young guys, I want rookies. I want to just see what happens. My depth is where I don't necessarily care as much about the age, because if I'm a contender, I'm looking for guys that I can fill in for a bye week, if I've already got my starters. If I'm a rebuilder, these are guys that I want to see pop a little bit so I can get better return to sell them. So it really does depend on what your roster looks like. And any of these guys we talk about really depends on what you're trying to do as a team, because so far both guys we mentioned are on the downside of 25, 29 for Landry, 26 for Allen Lazard, right? So it depends on where your team is at in its roster construction completely. So who is your next guy?
Yeah, well, speaking of a little older, my next guy is Brandon Cooks, sleeper ADP, wide receiver 45, 28 years old. I don't know if I mentioned that. He's a little bit older for my liking, but he has shown, he regularly finishes as a wide receiver 2 almost every single season. So what does this guy have to do to get respect in this league? He's currently has a wide receiver 4 price tag. You almost are positive he's going to surpass that. He's really he's the best, arguably the only passing option for the Texans as a whole. And people were a little worried last year, without Watson, that he wouldn't do very well. And he did great. I think he finished the year like a top 20 wide receiver. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't continue going forward. He should have a good 2-3 years, only 28 years old. So he still should be relevant for the next few seasons. And I think he's going to just kill that wide receiver 45 price tag right now. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be a top 25 play this upcoming season. Brad?
Yeah. Well, and you say 25. So PFF has him graded out as the 25th best receiver in football last year. So that helps you with your 25. When it comes to the options this team has, they have a lot of good receivers. Now they don't have a lot of productive receivers. They have talented guys with potential. Brevin Jordan at tight end has a lot of potential. Fell in the draft because of his size, maybe some off-field stuff, whatever. They've got Nego Collins, former Michigan guy. He's a talented receiver, but he's not the biggest, fastest guy, right? Cooks is your fast guy. Collins is supposed to be kind of your, I don't want to say big slot because he's probably going to be on the outside, but he's a route runner, big guy, big catch radius. Talented, not elite by any stretch of the imagination. A fine wide receiver 2 to Cooks' wide receiver 1. Then you bring in rookie John Metchi. That, I think, is the X factor in this whole conversation because Metchi can take the top off the defense. I know he's coming back from an ACL injury. I think his was an ACL injury. I think him and Jamison Williams had the same injury at Alabama. This kid has a ton of talent. Now, obviously, rookie wide receivers anymore, people would say it takes time to develop, but not anymore. This guy could step in and be productive from day one. So you don't know. But what I can say is they have options. Quarterback is still the question. Is Davis Mills going to take the next step? Is he a starting quarterback or is he just holding the seat until they take a starting quarterback next year? We don't know. What we do know is Cooks can produce with anybody. It doesn't really matter, right? I mean, last year with Davis Mills and, the corpse of, was it Tyrod Taylor was the guy who started the season? I can't even remember now. Yeah, Tyrod Taylor. He still had 129 targets, 87 catches, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. That was with not necessarily the most intriguing quarterback play, right? Year before, 81 catches, 1,100 yards. The year he got hurt, obviously only had 42 receptions. Year before that, 80 receptions, 1,200 yards. I mean, I'm with you. What does this guy have to do to get respect? I mean, unfortunately, I think when teams kept trading him around, that really started to put a stain on the dude's career, but he does nothing but produce. And I have him on a few spots, and I have no problem riding into the season with him as my wide receiver 2. And he'll probably outperform that on some weeks. Some weeks he's going to get you 100 yards and a touchdown. Some weeks he'll get you 40 yards and a touchdown. Some weeks he'll just get you 40 yards. I mean, his trajectory tends to be up and down, but by the end of the year, the results are always there, right? So I'm with you 100%. Dude's going to outperform, but I think this offense is better than. I think the biggest issue is really still going to be the offensive line. Outside of Laramie Tunsil, I mean, they've got a lot of unproven talent or guys that just aren't great, and that'll be the thing that really slows this team down. But that being said, they've got enough weapons that if Davis Mills can speed up the release, this team can be productive, and these receivers can be fantasy relevant. But Cooks definitely will be because he always is. All right.
Oh, now you just jinxed it.
I did. This will be the year that he finally his career's over. Oh man, sorry, Brandon Cooks. If it comes from us, I apologize. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about the guy that was Rick's article. So first, I'm going to post Rick's article in the chat here. Make sure y'all get on him and get on this and take a look.
Yeah,
at it.
Rick said to me, "Man, you should have waited till after I was done with all my articles before you did the stream." But I was like, you know what? I want to pump up your article now, man. I think it's great.
Yeah. And Rick did a great job with it. Allen Robinson, wide receiver from the Rams. Is definitely undervalued. Let me pull it up. I think he's wide receiver 44 right now. And the interesting thing is when you look at this team, obviously last year nobody had over 100 targets other than Cooper Kupp, who had like 4,000 targets. I mean, it felt like this guy was getting thrown at every time the ball was snapped. He finished with 191 targets last year. And other than that, nobody got over 100. That'll change this year because normally Robert Woods would have been there to get more targets, but Robert Woods got hurt. He left the season with, I think he had 69 or 70 targets before he got injured, So when you look at the amount of targets this team has, and let's look at it. So the Rams were, how many pass attempts did they have last year? Okay, so the Rams had 607 passing attempts last year. And even if you take out 200, we'll round up 200 for Cooper Kupp, that still is 407 pass attempts to go between whomever tight end they want to throw to, whether it's Higbee or whomever. Actually, did Higbee get traded? No, Higbee
he's still on the team.
Is he still there? Okay. So tight end one Higbee or Jacob Harris, I think is the backup. Or Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell. These guys are just not. I mean, Van Jefferson will get some targets and get some looks because he's beginning to build a rapport with Stafford, and you saw it last year happen. But let's be honest, Allen Robinson's going to get at least 100 targets, if not more, right? As long as he's healthy and on the field, the dude is going to get targeted because he's a game changer. Him across from Cooper Kupp is it's kind of game over. I mean, there really isn't you can't double one of them because the other one will just destroy you. So I'm all over it at wide receiver. What is he like? Wide receiver 3-4 type value right now. I would jump all over that. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. So rather than just say the same thing, let's just do this. Who would you rather draft? Allen Robinson, wide receiver 44 ADP, or the guy who we just talked about, Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 45 ADP. Both are 28 years old. Cooks is the wide receiver 1 on his team. Robinson's the wide receiver 2, but the Rams are a better offense. So how would you pick between these two? I thought it was interesting. They're neck and neck on the ADP, and I thought I'd put you on the spot. What do you think about that?
Well, and if Rick listens, he's going to flip out when I say this, but I'm going to go with Cooks just because he wasn't injured, right? Like Allen Robinson's coming back from injury. It probably doesn't mean anything in the long term, but he's the number 1 option. We know he's going to get a ton of targets. We know he's going to produce if he's healthy and on the field. I would take it just because we know he's been healthy for a few seasons. He looks good. He can produce with anybody. Allen Robinson, I don't hate it either way though, but injury would be what would make me go, I'll probably take Cooks. I don't care either way. I would be more than happy with either.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's pretty difficult though to pick though. Like if you had to just this is a situation where I could see myself on the clock doing a draft. Who do you take? Like this is a tough one. So I just thought that was interesting that they're neck and neck on ADP.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I guess we'll find out in a few months.
I'm about to say by the end of the season we'll know which one of us the groups of people are right for sure. All right. So that being said, who is the next guy? And this one should be a fun conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we might disagree on this one a little bit. So my guy here is Kadarius Toney, wide receiver 48. Now he's only 23, and let me just preface this by saying this is not like a slam dunk. Hey, you got to go get this guy. This is a risky buy. This is risky. But I do think the upside is there, and I would take him above a lot of guys that are being taken ahead of him right now. So two that come to mind are Christian Watson, Green Bay Packers, and Sky Moore, Kansas City Chiefs. So these are two rookies that are being drafted 32, 33 overall, wide receiver 32, 33. And Kadarius Toney here over a round later, wide receiver 48, maybe 2 rounds. Maybe even 3 rounds. And I would take Toney above Christian Watson and Sky Moore. I think the floor is the same. I think, especially with his injury last season, he didn't, he was injured, didn't finish the full season. He
had surgery this offseason. Yeah.
Yeah. But he showed like crazy flashes of just he was just incredible. He was just lights out. And so I think he has more upside than Christian Watson and Sky Moore, at least what you can project on their given what we already know what they can do in the league because they haven't been in the league. So I think Toney has an inherently more upside, yet I think the floors are relatively about the same. And so I just think Toney at wide receiver 48 is just it's a risky buy. But it's a great gamble because he's shown, he can run routes. He's real quick. It's like anytime he touches the ball, he could score. And so I just think his ADP is just lower than it really should be, especially when you put it up against someone like Christian Watson or Sky Moore, who haven't done anything and could be nothing at all. So I was surprised to see Toney this low on the list. Granted, it is risky. And yeah, I would take Brandon Cooks and Allen Robinson ahead of him in a startup. But there is a lot of nice upside with Toney. And that's why I think if you wanted to just kind of go for the home run ball, you could take Toney ahead of all those guys and it could pay off.
Well, so first question in rebuttal is all the conversations about possible trading him away throughout this offseason didn't scare you?
No, because I think the Giants are not a contending team. I think that they have so many holes to fill that if they wanted to trade him because they think he's valuable, then they're going to put him out on the market, see what they could get. But the only reason why they were floating him out there is because he is valuable. He is really good. He has a lot of upside. If he wasn't any good, they wouldn't have just thrown him on the market. Like it wouldn't have made any sense. So I think they were just saying, hey, look, you guys know this guy is good. Do you want him? What will you pay for him? Just like Deebo Samuel was kind of put on the market as well. Obviously, it was a little bit different circumstance.
He put himself out there.
But they fielded offers and they didn't get anything that they thought made sense. But that's fine. Same with the Giants. The Giants obviously didn't get anything that they thought was fair. I don't think that diminishes his value at all.
All right. So next question. How do they distribute these targets? We got Kenny Galladay. We got Darius Slayton. We got Wan'Dale Robinson. We got Sterling Shepard. Then we got Kadarius Toney. Like, where does it go? It's not like Danny Dimes is dropping, 600 passes and actually completing
all Toney. Every pass.
He's getting 593 targets.
No, Galladay was hurt. I don't think anyone expects Galladay to play the full season. He's had so many injuries in the past.
A lot of those guys have been hurt a lot.
Sterling Shepard as well, right? I don't like banking on rookie wide receivers in their first year. I know we've had a nice run, but I don't think that that's like a new norm. I just think that we've had a couple of lucky kind of seasons. I think most of the time it's going to take most guys a season or two to get their feet under them, get familiarity with the system, get familiarity with the quarterback. So I expect Tony to be the best wide receiver on this team this season. If he can stay healthy, I think he can totally destroy this ADP.
Well, and pre-show, my struggle with it was because obviously saw the list is I kind of have him as a wide receiver 4 right now. So he's right where I kind of expect him to be. Now, if you asked me the question we just had about, Cooks and Robinson, and I'm doing a startup and you're saying, oh, well, who are you taking, Tony or any of these other rookies? I think that would be a tough conversation, depending on what you think about Tony going forward. And that's where I come back to, I Tarantino back to my first question is like, I don't know what this team thinks about him long-term, if they're really planning on keeping him or not, because they're already dangling him out as a trade target, a trade option after they drafted him in the first round last year. Obviously new coaching staff, whatever. I think he's kind of right where his value sits. I think he's somewhere in the, 35 to 50 range. Now, obviously he could maybe outproduce 48 some, but I don't know that he's going to get super high. Like, I don't know that he's going to outperform so much so, unlike some of these other guys on our list. Jarvis Landry, he's going to way outperform. Brandon Cook should significantly outperform. Allen Robinson should, Tony's the one guy on this list where I was like, yeah, he's probably a top 50 receiver.
If you're doing a rookie draft and you're sitting there with, 109 and you can draft Sky Moore or maybe Christian Watson, let's say you're picking 10 or 11, I would in a heartbeat offer that pick for Tony rather than taking Watson or Sky Moore. I mean, it wouldn't even just easy, just automatic.
I got to pull this straight. I just traded Tony away. The only Tony share I had, I traded away.
Oh boy.
And I was going to pull up the trade.
What did you get? Let's go.
Let's see here. Transaction.
I'll try not to laugh live in your face.
Well, so this is a team that I won the league last year, and this is the team where I said I traded myself into a good team because going into the year I was picking first, and by the end of the year I won the championship because I made like 32 trades or something crazy.
That's dope. That's good.
I traded a crazy amount, but Tony was one of those guys that was a throw-in on a trade. All right, so I traded Kadarius Toney and I'm hurting at running back right now. My running backs are not running backs. Traded for James Robinson and multiple picks, and that was what I got for him. So
like seconds and thirds or something.
Yeah, they were later picks. I don't have it up at the moment, but they were later picks. So they weren't super sexy. But I needed a running back, and I'm trying to acquire ETN and James Robinson because I'm trying to get guys that I think I can get cheaper that might overperform where they're at. And I'm deeper at wide receiver. I got Deontay Johnson. I've got Adam Thielen. I've got DJ Chark. I've got like 5 or 6 receivers, and Tony was like one of the 6 receivers. I was like, if I can move one for a running back, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. I mean, I don't hate that at all. I mean, you're trading for a need. That's okay. You're picking up some extra picks on the way. I don't have any issue with that trade at all.
No, I just thought it was funny when we posted it. I kind of see him as he's kind of in the area where his value is. Will he overperform 48? Probably. I mean, he could probably get a little higher, maybe in the 35 to 40 range is kind of where I would think his, because you got to go back to this team is going to try to find a new identity, new coaching staff. I know they threw a bunch with Josh Allen. Daniel Jones is not Josh Allen. Like you couldn't even put lipstick on this pig and get him to be Josh Allen. I mean, there's just a lot that needs to happen for him to get Josh Allen territory. They may throw the ball a lot, but he's not nearly as accurate. The arm is not nearly the same as Josh Allen. I mean, there's just so many things where I'm like, and which is why I've kind of tried to stay away from all the receiving options because I just don't trust any of them. If I'm competing, if I'm rebuilding, sure, take shots on Wandale and Kadarius Toney. Fine by me. There you go. So that being said, we're going to move on to the next guy. Another New Orleans Saints wide receiver 40, Michael Thomas. I think he outperforms this if everybody's healthy and everybody plays and Jameis is the quarterback. But I think he more or less gets you in probably the 25 to 30 range. So maybe this is a Kadarius Toney situation where he's not going to overperform crazy. Like, I don't think we're going to get vintage Michael Thomas anymore, right? With how many extremely talented wide receivers are in the NFL right now and how the league is built and how New Orleans is going to spread the ball out with these different receiving options. I think Thomas can get you somewhere in the realm of 800 to 1,000 yards and probably 6 to 9 touchdowns is in my mind kind of the sweet spot where I would see him fall. What do you think about Thomas, and do you think he overperforms it? Is he undervalued?
Yeah, I think in a PPR league, I would argue he'll get more catches and more points than that. Just because I think that he'll get a lot more catches than what you just said. I see him well above 100.
I actually didn't say any catches, did I?
I thought you said 80, but I could be wrong.
Oh yeah, I probably did. You're probably right.
I think you said like 80 catches, 1,000 yards, something like that.
I'm probably drinking that black and gold Kool-Aid.
Well, you're going to be editing this film later, so I guess go back and check that.
I'll hear it.
But no, I mean, I think he'll be well over 100 catches. I think, especially in a PPR league, that's one of the things. I do rankings on the site, and I do standard. And I mean, for Dynasty, like I try not to factor that in too much, just because it's Dynasty, and it's just kind of a fluid type thing, and most of the guys are going to be valued the same, whether it's PPR or not in Dynasty. But with someone like Michael Thomas and with Jameis Winston, I think he's going to force feed him the ball. I think Jameis Winston is just dying for people to catch the ball. That's why I think Landry's going to have a great year. I think they're going to be way higher on their pass attempts this year. And I think Michael Thomas is also going to have a very good season. I don't know for sure if the touchdowns are going to be there, but I do think the catches and yards are going to be there. So I agree with you that I think he'll outperform his current ADP. And I think if you're contending, he's a great buy right now. I think you can get him very cheap, and I think he could be a huge factor down the stretch.
What are you paying for him? So if you're an owner looking to get a guy like a Michael Thomas or a DeAndre Hopkins, one of these guys that there's some question marks, like what are you willing to pay if you're a team that is contending and maybe you're not strong at running back and you're thinking, well, you know what, I'll just play extra receivers if I can land another really intriguing receiver. What do you do?
If we're in the preseason, or if we get like a lot of reports and video that, he's running and doing well, because he's coming off of an injury, surgery, that's the only hesitation I have. He may not be full go to start the year. He may have nagging injuries to start the season. He may start on the PUP list. That's the only thing that I'm hesitating on. So if he's playing and looks good, or, not inhibited by an injury, then I would pay a late first if I'm a contending team and need wide receiver help.
We're going to share this screen then, because I'm just pulling up an article from The Spun by Sports Illustrated from 3 hours ago that Michael Thomas shares an impressive training video. So I haven't seen it.
So there we go. So now
we're going to do it live. So let's see this impressive training video.
Is there a video?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a video of him.
All right.
Now, this isn't like the Tariq Cohen video, right? Where Tariq Cohen. Yeah.
I got nothing. Oh, yeah. So he's a mile away running.
Can you zoom in? That was it? That was the impressive video? Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is not enough for me to pay a 23 late first.
All right, so let's go to Twitter and see what the video. Let's see what's
Yeah.
going on there. Because I thought that was hilarious. So, like, impressive workout video. The guy's running, right? Like, what's impressive about that?
So
He's a football player.
And I tell this to people all the time. You don't have to trade right now. I mean, certainly there are times where you can do a trade now and it's fine. But especially with someone like this, there's a lot of question marks, you can wait. You don't have to do it right now. And I don't think people are going to be selling him right now. This is the video, huh?
He's running. That's really all there is to it.
That's very unimpressive. All right.
Wait. But Sports Illustrated said impressive. All right. Well, so that is what it is. He ran.
And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, that's why it's important to watch the video. Don't just go off the headline. Don't just go off the blurb on the article. Read the real quote to see what really happened. That's your lesson right there.
I mean, the positive to take away from it is he's running, right? Like, he wasn't doing that last year. He wasn't doing anything last year. And, and there were tons of reports about why he wasn't doing anything. Maybe there was some friction with the front office, the injury. I mean, whatever. What we're seeing is the guy's at least moving again. That's a plus. We want to see him on the field. We think he's going to outperform wide receiver. What I say was 40, wide receiver 40.
Yeah, 40, yeah.
So, so there you go. There, wide receiver 40. He's probably going to outproduce that. At least we know he's going to run. Anthony, who is next up on our list of guys? Who are we talking about?
Oh, let me see. I got all distracted by our video there.
You got excited. I know who it is, but it's your guy. So
my guy is Bobby Woods. Bobby Trees.
Yeah.
Here we go. Robert Woods, wide receiver 58. And people that watch this show know I'm a little bit of an ageist. And yes, he is 30 years old, and he is very older for my liking. But how can you not fall in love with wide receiver 58 for a guy not as good as Brandon Cooks has been, but I mean, solid wide receiver 2, 3, and to get him at this crazy discount for me. I mean, I know he's coming off injury, but now that AJ Brown is gone in Tennessee, and he's basically going to be like their best wide receiver, at least to start the year. Obviously, they have Treylon Burks now, rookie, but like I just said a little while ago, I'm not big on rookies coming in, making a huge impact. So I expect Robert Woods to be the wide receiver 1. The only hesitation is how he comes back from his recovery from his injury and all that. But even still, at wide receiver 58, I don't see how there's any way he doesn't end the year as a wide receiver 3 or better. And so I just think at this value, it's a slam dunk type pick. I just think it's a slam dunk type pick. I think if you're contending, or if you're building a roster to be a contending team, by this part of a draft, you'll know, like, hey, this is going to take a couple years, or this team is built to go right now. And he's the type of guy where if you're going to try to win the league this year, he's the perfect type of guy to get at this ADP.
And you have to look at what this team is. So they got rid of AJ Brown. That's 100, 105 targets I think he had last year. Julio Jones is in there. That's another 48, 50, something like that target. I mean, so you got 150-ish targets to go between, and I think even more than that. I mean, because you think about Chester Rogers, Ferkser, Jeff Swaim. I mean, all these guys that just were getting targets based out of necessity at this point.
Right.
There's a lot of targets that could be had for Treylon Burks, for Bobby Trees, and I would even throw a name in here that we aren't going to talk about tonight, but Nick Westbrook-Ikhine.
Yeah.
He showed some trust with the quarterback. I mean, I think he got targeted 50 or 60 times last year. I could see a little bit of an uptick. I could see him and Robert Woods kind of be their top 2 guys while Treylon Burks comes along. I mean, we've been hearing all sorts of different rumors and reports out of camp about different health things with Burks. Veterans.
Can I just touch on Burks real quick, since you brought up the health issue with Burks?
I do know you like young receivers, so you're going to want to touch on
them. It was reported that Burks has an inhaler, and people are saying, "Oh, he has asthma," and how do they draft him?
It's been all sorts of things.
Look, I have seasonal allergies, and I own an inhaler. Okay, I only use it for 3 months out of the year. I'm dead serious right now. I use it in April, May, and June. Okay. I'm fine during football season. I mean, I played football and basketball just fine. It's seasonal allergy. So I'm assuming that's what it is with him, just because he was so dominant in college. How many clips are there of Treylon Burks catching a touchdown in college and then running over to the sideline using an inhaler? I mean, it doesn't exist, right? It's not like this guy just suddenly got asthma. I think it's seasonal allergies. I think if people are worried about Treylon Burks in your league, he's a super good buy right now, because I think people are blowing this way out of the water, just like people did with Jamar Chase, saying, "Oh, he has all these drops issues and he can't see the ball." It's really reminiscent of that, and I'm surprised not even a full year after that happened with Jamar Chase that people are doing it again with Treylon Burks. So I just
all right. So
needed to get that off my chest, because that was building up today, and I'm glad we got a chance for me to address it.
I'm clipping this here. You just compared Treylon Burks to Jamar Chase, so obviously everybody needs to take Treylon Burks at the 1-1.
Wait.
No, I'm just kidding. And our boy Sully, love to our Sully. They did get a big upgrade at tight end. Austin Hooper is better than any tight end they've had in years there, honestly. So with the veterans there, they don't have to rush Treylon Burks in. They can let him relax and make sure that he's good and all the health and whatever the real issues are, whatever it is, whether it's something basic or not, they can bring him along slowly. He doesn't have to be rushed into action. So Robert Woods is going to get a ton of action. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I think, gets a fair amount of action. I think Austin Hooper gets a fair amount of action. Like Burks can come along slowly and not be the focal point of this offense because it doesn't have to be, right? I mean, they've got plenty of other options, veteran guys. And the thing that you have to think about is with Tennessee, they still think they're competing in their, not only in their division, but for playoffs, for deeper. I mean, the team seems to be kind of going in the wrong direction, but who knows, right? So I'm not super, yes, I would completely agree. So I'm not super concerned about any of these things. What I will say is that I agree. Robert Woods is woefully undervalued at wide receiver. Was it 58 or whatever we said he has. 58. So I think he performs at a wide receiver 3 level. I have no problem going, you know what? He's in the top 36 of receivers. If he's healthy and on the field all year, even if he's healthy on the field for, 14 games, he gets you in the wide receiver 3 conversation. He grades out rather well. I mean, when you look at PFF for last year, he graded out as a top 30 receiver. He had like a 75 PFF grade. I mean, when he's on the field, I mean, he's a very good route runner. He knows exactly where to be to help his quarterback be successful. And Tannehill needs that. He needs veteran guys that are going to go and be where they need to be on the field. And it's a good thing. I think it's a plus for Robert Woods and for Tannehill, because Tannehill will be the starter this year. Let's not get crazy thinking about other rookies taking his job. All right. So next up is a guy that I know Sully's going to have plenty to say about. We're going to talk Adam Thielen. Right now he's sitting on Sleeper's ADP as wide receiver 52, and I think that is insane. I have Adam Thielen on a few rosters that I'm competing because he's one of those, just like I mentioned earlier, he's an older guy that I am perfectly fine as a depth piece that can be a starter on a fairly regular basis for me. This team didn't change that much, right? Other than the coaching staff, which we've all agreed has needed to change for a while. They have the talented pieces still to be successful on offense. Whether you love them or hate them in the NFC North and whatever they're going to do, he's a steal. Exactly. Absolutely, Sully. Your comment just came through, and I agree completely. At wide receiver 52, you jump all over that, and you'd be happy with it, because if he's healthy and he plays a full season, he's going to get you 1,000+ yards and probably around 10 touchdowns. You can't double cover Justin Jefferson and leave Thielen open. You can't double cover Thielen and leave Justin Jefferson open. Like, it just, you have to leave somebody open, and Thielen gets the beneficiary of that elite wide receiver on the other side. What do you think, Leone?
Well, I agree with everything you said, except that if I'm doing a draft, I'm probably not going to take him. I'm probably fading off him. He's turning 32 in a couple of months. And if I'm doing a startup and we're doing, ADP, I'm not drafting a 32-year-old wide receiver. I'm probably not. And there's probably other guys at the 50 to 60 range that I'd rather have. But if I'm contending and I think I can get him at that price and I need to, plug in a wide receiver 3 on my team, and I'm all over that. So I don't think he's a guy that you just need to get rid of. If he's on your team, I have him on a roster that I'm competing on, and I'm more than happy to have him there. But he's not really a guy that I'm going to go out of my way and draft just because of his age. But I agree with everything else you said completely. I think he's at a great value, and I think he is going to be. I think he has a chance to be on a lot of winning rosters this year, just like we talked about with Robert Woods. Although Robert Woods is a couple years. That's the thing. Like, that's an example, right? Like, Robert Woods has later ADP than Adam Thielen, and I would 100% take Robert Woods over Adam Thielen, even coming off the injury, just because he's 2 years younger. So I don't know if you disagree with that.
I think I do. I think Adam Thielen can outproduce Robert Woods. I think Robert Woods could catch up to him and have very similar when it comes to amount of receptions, but I don't know that Woods has the touchdown upside that Adam Thielen will have, right? Like, we know that Minnesota's used him significantly throughout his career, closer to the end zone, and I think Thielen has a better chance for double-digit touchdowns. Yardage-wise, I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I think on the spot they could be similar, but I think Adam Thielen's the guy I would want over Robert Woods at this point. If I was looking for building a roster to win year one, I want Thielen over Woods.
But if you're drafting a roster and you expect to win year one, and then you don't win year one, like, what happens to the next 3 years trying to rebuild this team? Look, you guys, if you want to do that, you can do that. More power to you. That is not how I build my teams. That is too risky for me. I would rather build a more balanced, younger team and try to win and have future chances than try to just go all in year one and then lose and then be screwed. So everyone, there's different ways to skin a cat. I don't like using that analogy, but like there's different ways to do it. But that is not how I do my rosters personally.
Well, and yes, it's a philosophical question. How do you build your roster? But if you're getting these guys that late and they're falling down that far in your draft,
then I'm okay with it.
Like that's not that
then
big
I'm okay
deal.
with it.
You're not really,
and I agree with that.
And
I did that in a league with Sully where I think Julio Jones fell to like round 5 or 6 a couple years ago, and I took him. But that kind of blew up in my face. I mean, he hasn't done anything since I took him. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. There's a certain point where it's okay to take them. That's a good example if Thielen fell. But it is if it doesn't work out, man, it can be devastating.
It can be. So I'm going to throw out the rest of these names real rapid fire because I want to get to Q&A. We got some questions. So I'm going to throw them out and we could just real quickly hit on them or not at all. I mean, people kind of know these names. Michael Gallup right now is sitting at wide receiver 51. Odell Beckham Jr. is sitting at wide receiver 72. DeAndre Hopkins is sitting at wide receiver 39. And Mike Williams, who Rick has an article up on RotoHeat about, is sitting at wide receiver 35. All these guys should have no problem outperforming their ADP as it stands today. Thoughts, Leone?
Well, I guess I'll talk about the guy that I picked. Odell Beckham, I just think, he's only 29. And I've self-admittedly, I've never been a big Odell fan, but his ADP is wide receiver 72. I guess people just don't think he's going to get signed somewhere. He will. And I think he's going to go to a team that needs a wide receiver. And it very well could be who we talked about earlier, the Green Bay Packers, or, someone like that, where it's like he would be, could you imagine if he got signed by the Packers? Like his ADP would go from 72 to probably like 35, like overnight. Like it would just be incredible. So I think he's a guy that he's a gamble where he's a guy that I would definitely be targeting. If I already have a league and someone wanted to trade him, he's a guy I'd be buying all over the place right now. He's only 29. He may sign a 1-year deal. He still has years left, and he could be a huge factor this year. So of all the guys that you kind of just rattled off, I think he is the most obtainable price-wise and could have the biggest impact as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I would target any of these guys in trades, right? Like if there's a team that's willing to trade these guys at a fair prices and, lower than what you would expect, seconds, thirds, things like that. I'm having those conversations to see if it makes sense because all these guys provide value at least this year and potentially next year in most cases. Beckham, 29, could still produce a few years, but, again, keeps coming back from injury. I mean, that guy's really been struggling with injuries over the last few years. So that's a concern. I would rather target, somebody like a Mike Williams or Hopkins or, Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks and Allen Robinson are the top 2 guys on this list I would target just because I'm fairly confident you're getting them much cheaper than what they really should be valued at. The rest of these guys, some of them have name value and notoriety that may still pump their price up a little higher, potentially. Obviously, I don't have any data to back that up because I could not find many trades involving these guys in any of my leagues currently, other than the Kadarius Toney trade. I don't see these other players moving right now, and I wouldn't be trading them.
And I agree with you. Allen Robinson and Brandon Cooks are the two. Like we probably should have put them on the thumbnail. Like those are the 2 guys that like, hey, you gotta get these guys. They're gonna just kill it this year. They're still young enough where they're going to be good years down the line. I think Odell fits into that mold too. And then I think Mike Williams does as well, although his ADP, I think of everyone is the highest at 35, but I think that he's 27. He finally had a great season. I expect him to have another very good season. And I think even at 35, he's undervalued as well. So, but yeah, I agree with you. Price-wise and upside-wise, Allen Robinson and Brandon Cooks are the highlights of the show.
For sure. All right, folks. So those are our undervalued wide receivers. This is a new series that is starting. So Bryce will be back next week, and they'll be talking, and talk about some of these other undervalued players as well. But we want to get to some Q&A. So for those of you listening in podcast format, feel free to jump on the streams on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern time, because you can get your questions answered live by the gentlemen that are on the show. We do appreciate everybody liking, subscribing, hit the notification icon, leave a rating and review if you're on podcast. But we appreciate you guys. We love y'all. We're going to Q&A, so we'll see you later. All right, so we got a question. I want to get to Sully's question. I do appreciate Sully hanging out and chopping it up with us. Love you, brother.
Yeah,
His
what's up,
question
Sully?
is Sky Moore and 223 firsts or CD Lamb? See, so the struggle I have here is I'm not a Sky Moore truther like a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of people that really love Sky Moore.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I don't know if Kansas City, it wouldn't surprise me if Kansas City's grabbing some more receivers next year, and Sky Moore is just kind of a slot receiver type guy fighting.
He could be Mecole Hardman all over again. I mean, really, like, I don't know why people don't get that.
That's my struggle with what is this team, because I don't think Juju is a long-term answer. I don't know if Juju is a long-term answer, I guess I should say. I'm not sure he is, but I just don't, so I would stick with CD. The other part of it is what's your team look like? I like CD Lamb. I don't hate 223 firsts though, so I could really go either way. But if somebody sent this to me and I was the Lamb owner, I'm probably not taking it.
I think it really depends on where those firsts are projected, because if they're too early first, I think too early firsts is equal to CD Lamb by itself, and then you're just getting Sky Moore on top. So I saw a similar trade that was like Sky Moore and 1 first for Lamb. That's easily Lamb for me. But if you're telling me those could be too early first, I think those are equal to Lamb in itself. And then you're getting Sky Moore on top. That's how I see it. But if those are too mid to late firsts, or you're not exactly sure, then I would just stick with Lamb, the sure thing.
Well, and it wouldn't surprise me if CD Lamb got something in the realm of 150-ish targets this year, right? Like, he had, I think, 120 or 130 last year. It wouldn't surprise me with Cooper being gone. He sees 150 plus targets. I mean, this guy could be a 1,400 yard receiver, and somewhere in the realm of 10 touchdowns. I mean, just insane how high his value could get. So I'm, right now I feel like, okay, yeah, it's nice, but
John's comment up here.
As a Lamb owner, I would take Sky Moore and 223 firsts. I think Lamb is overrated. Okay, well, there you go.
John must also believe in Sky Moore, right? Like, he must
probably a truther.
Probably believes in Sky Moore.
Sully says it's a startup, and they're likely mid, so they're probably somewhere in the middle of the first round.
It's like, does CD? I mean, do you think you're a really good team? Like, does CD really round out your team? Like, do you think you have a good shot to cash out this year and get first, second, or third? Or do you think that your team might have a shot, but probably isn't a contender? Because if you're of the mindset where, I probably ain't going to contend, maybe you want to just go for the upside with Moore, take the picks. Yeah. I'm trying to move 23 and a 24 first with Moore instead.
I love the 23 class. That's why I would like to keep the firsts in the 23 class, because I think there's some really talented players there. But I really like CD Lamb a lot. I like the situation he's in. I mean, this team should be throwing at a bunch, and he could be a huge beneficiary. So I would try to get Lamb. Obviously, John is not the biggest fan of Lamb, or I should say is not big enough to keep him for 2 firsts and Sky Moore. That's the issue for me, is I'm not the hugest Sky Moore. I like him, don't get me wrong, but I liked Mecole Hardman as well.
My gut says stick with Lamb.
Yeah, if you're a contender,
my gut says stick with Lamb.
If you're a contender, Lamb can get you that price come trade deadline. If you're struggling and you're not really at that point, like if you realize your team is probably not going to do it, then you could pull the trigger if you needed to. But he's so young and he's so talented. Like,
I would try to get a 23 first another way. I would try to keep Lamb. I mean, I think Lamb is arguably a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. I mean, who would you rank? it would be Chase. It would be Chase, Jefferson, and then Lamb would be right there. Maybe Debo. I mean, I don't. Who else is really in the conversation? It used to be so easy to just list off the best wide receivers in the NFL, but now, given age and other factors with trades,
get out of here with that age business.
Who would you rank?
All right, so let's see.
Top 5. Who would you rank, Brad? Top 5.
So my top 5 probably are going to be something like Cup.
Would you rather have Lamb over Cup, given age?
No.
Lamb is only
Cup's 28. It's not like he's that old. And the way that he plays, I mean, come on.
Lamb is 23.
Oh my goodness. I'm not gonna. The way I trade in fantasy football, he ain't gonna be on my team in 5 years anyway. So
okay. So you would take Cup ahead of Lamb.
Well, I'm not. I'm
putting you on the spot, blasting this on Twitter.
Yeah, I would do
I wouldn't.
At Twitter. I'm okay with. So I'm not putting this. This is my top 5, but this isn't necessarily in order because Jamar Chase is my 1. Chase, Cup, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson is insanely good. And then the 5th one is my struggle. So I would normally just say Devonta Adams, but now he's Devonta Adams, Las Vegas Raider Devonta Adams.
Yeah.
So then I would consider,
Diggs or Debo.
Keenan Allen is a guy that's woefully undervalued as a top 10 receiver. I
would
consider him.
Where is? Let me I have the list right here. Let me see where Keenan Allen fell on this thing. That's a good shout.
Cowboys spread the ball. Oh, so Dak has supported only 1 wide receiver in 6 seasons. Amari Cooper, wide receiver 10. Cowboys spread the ball out so much. I like the point, John. I like the point. I feel like Kansas City is going to be very similar, though. I mean, think about their receiving core.
25. Yeah, that's low. Wide receiver 25. That's
25.
Low.
He's a top 20 receiver, probably top 15 receiver.
Yeah, that's low. Okay, what do you think about Amon-Ra? I know you're a Lions fan. Amon-Ra, 29. Doesn't that seem too high? 29.
So they're still going to target him a bunch, right? I mean, Goff trusts him. So 29 puts him in wide receiver 3 conversation. I don't think so. I mean,
I like how I've totally hijacked this show and just asking all these random questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amon-Ra is somewhere in the 25 to 40 range, right?
That seems high. I think 29 seems a little high.
Well, okay, so 25 to 40. So if you put him at 35, okay. If you put him at 40, I think he overperforms that. Like he's going to get you a significant amount of catches. He probably won't get 1,000 yards. I think he's probably in the 700 to 900 yards.
Yeah,
no, right.
Ew, man, 29.
This offense
has them like neck and neck with Keenan Allen. That's just
nuts. So that's where I'm like, no, Keenan Allen's going to way outperform that. Like Keenan Allen's going to get you another 1,000.
But like Amon-Ra is ahead of Amari Cooper. That's insane. He's ahead of Rashad Bateman. That's insane.
How do you feel about Amari Cooper with Baker Mayfield throwing him the ball?
Well, as of right now, Baker Mayfield is not projected to be the starting quarterback.
I'm just saying. Okay, so if we're looking, I mean, that changes the complexion of Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is not nearly as intriguing as an option if he's got a guy that just really struggles to get the ball to his receivers.
Yeah, but Amari Cooper is, he's a guy that can run like a 7-yard slant, and take it to the house. I have confidence if Baker is the quarterback that he would be just fine.
Yeah, if Deshaun's a quarterback, I have no problem saying I like all the receivers. Give me some DPJ, give me David Bell, give me all these guys. But we don't know what's going on there. So that's where we're at with those things. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts right now. A lot of these guys are. Oh yeah, so he was targeted heavily without Swift and Hawk, but to mention what the Lions added. I mean, Jamison Williams is going to take time to get back. DJ Shark is coming off injury as well, and we know Sully loves DJ Shark. So it's not like Detroit added anything that should, be intriguing enough to not give Amon-Ra St. Brown a significant amount of targets. Yeah, I agree with you, Sully. I don't think Baker takes another snap. I mean, it's probably Jacoby Brissett throwing him the ball.
I think the biggest
Jacoby Brissett to Amari Cooper is not very exciting either.
The biggest sells of the offseason for me right now is Amon-Ra St. Brown and Hunter Renfrow. Those are guys that both very similar They were just like the only options in the passing game. They benefited as a huge amount, and it's a new team this year. And both those guys, I think, are easy sells. So
I would think you would have had to have sold them both though by now, right? Like
I don't know. We're not looking at this ADP. That's what I mean. Like Hunter Renfrow, 41.
Love you too, Sully. So Devonta Adams coming into town, I'm sure scared away a lot of Renfrow buyers, right? Because now Renfro's
He's still 41. 41. There's no chance he finishes that high.
Probably not. And then Amon-Ra has a lot of other competition that came in town. Like I think if you wanted peak value for both of those guys, it was between mid-January and
you may be right.
late March.
But
so I'm sure you can still get good value, but I just don't think. Oh, we got to end this show. Sully agrees with Anthony. We know that things are just going off the rails at this point. We might as well chalk it up. Bryce, if you're watching this, you got to save us next week.
And you know what, Bryce disagrees with me on Renfrow too. That's one point of contention. Maybe we should probably make some sort of a Renfrow bet, because that's one guy that I am fading left and right. I have no shares, and I will never own one.
Yeah, I've never been a Renfrow buyer, but it's just because once I was even remotely interested, the price just wasn't where I wanted to pay. So
yeah,
thanks guys for hanging out.
But yeah, Sully, I say keep Lamb. To answer your question now, all the way around, I say keep Lamb.
Yeah, I don't hate the deal either way. If you're stacked a receiver and you want to acquire some first, sell them. If you don't want to sell them, I'm okay with keeping them.
I think Sully did like a really nice rebuild in one of the leagues he was in, and I think he ended up turning the team around. So, I mean, I'm sure if he takes those first, he'll make good use of them. But I just think Lamb is too coveted of an asset right now. It would take a lot for me to get rid of him, and I don't think that's enough.
Yeah. I don't have any Lamb shares, so who am I to argue that? I would say that it would be hard for me to sell. So, thank you guys for hanging out as always. We really do appreciate it. If you want your questions answered live, we are here every Tuesday. Normally, it is obviously Bryce and Anthony, but I love to pop in and offer some advice and offer some tips wherever I can. You can find us at rotoheat.com. Things are blowing up. Our rankings we update on the monthly. We've been getting them updated at the beginning of the months. Things are looking good. We've been working hard to add some new features to the website. Lots of articles we're pumping out. We're trying to get undervalued guys out. We're trying to get get some redraft content going to be stirring up here soon, because redraft season is fast approaching. So keep it locked in here. If you guys haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. We are back on Thursday night. I'm talking Devy with Dez, and then we'll be back on Monday for the IDP show. And we want you guys here with us. We want to chop it up we want to chat with y'all, because we do enjoy it. So, Anthony, it was a pleasure hanging out with you, my friend, and driving this thing off the rails like we just did.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you for hanging out, my friend. And
thank you.
We'll see y'all later.
Good night.